Welcome back to our cutting board project. I'm Jeremy with Possum Fork Heritage. This video will focus on ripping the 4 boards that you received in your possum box into 8 usable boards that we can glue up to create our cutting board. To do this, I'm going to demonstrate ripping the 3/4 inch Purple Heart board and one of the 8/4 boards that was in the package. In this case, I will focus on the maple board. You will repeat whatever we learn on the maple board with the African mahogany and the walnut board. To do this job, you'll need a pencil, you'll need a ruler and a straight edge, or a tape measure and a straight edge, some way to mark a straight line and to measure. You'll need your saw, and you'll also need, if you do not have a workbench, a way to secure the board when we cut it, and you will use the clamp that was recommended in the project. So let's get started. Step 1 for ripping these boards to width is to mark a line to serve as a guide for our cutting. To do this, we want to mark a line down the center or close to the center of each of these boards. Keep in mind, we will be working on or drawing our line on the faces of the boards with these circles. These boards are close to 2 inches, but they're not exactly 2 inches thick. In fact, this one measures to be 2 1/16 of an inch. And this one measures also to be 2 1/16 of an inch. I believe that all of the boards that came in your package will reflect this measurement. In order to mark a line, we don't have to divide that extra 16th into a 32nd. What we can do is simply mark 1 inch from one edge. Now this is important to note. This is the difference between accuracy and precision. Measurements that are close to the known value are said to be accurate, whereas measurements that are close to each other are said to be precise. Why does that matter? Because if I were to measure this board, see it's 2 1/16, and then if I were to mark this board in order to draw a straight line for me to rip along, and I marked this board at 1 inch here, and then I flipped my ruler and measured from the other side or the other edge and marked 1 inch, I could be very accurate on making my marks based on the dimension from the edge of the board to the 1 inch mark on the ruler. However, this would not be precise because this mark and this mark are now 1/16 of an inch different from left to right. Therefore, if I'm trying to make a straight line down the length of this board, my line may be straight, but it will not be parallel to either edge. And so that's the difference. I can be accurate in my measurement, but not very precise. That said, we need to mark both faces of this board. Therefore, I need to always make sure that I pull my dimension from the same edge of the board. If I'm pulling from this edge of the board to make my mark on this face, then I need to pull from this edge of the board to make my mark on this face. So be sure as you're flipping your board that you're keeping precision in mind and you're working from the same edge at all times. One tip that I have for you is whenever you're marking your board to make a line, don't just make a simple tick, because if you walk away or you're thinking about something else and you come back, which tip of that tick mark is the measurement? Well, if I'm not sure, I have to remeasure. Whereas if I use the V-shaped grapheme or the caret, the tip of my caret will be my mark. And if I walk away or if anybody else is working with me, they'll know that my intention was to make this point, my mark. So in this instance, since we're 2 1/16 of an inch, I'm going to make my mark 1 inch away from one of the edges. In this case, I'll use this edge. And then what I'll do is whenever I start to cut, I'll cut to the opposing side of the line. And that way I'll be closer to having these two individual pieces the same thickness. They'll be relatively the same thickness. Now another tip is always mark an X on the side that you want to cut from your line. My ruler is only 12 inches approximately. It's a little bit longer from this point to this point. So I can't use it to mark a line continuously from one end to the other. So I'm going to make 3 individual marks on my board. And the ruler's upside down for all of you. And then I will lay my ruler on, I'll draw my first line, and then I'll draw my second line. Now, another tip is go ahead and put the point of your pencil on the tip of your grapheme there, or your caret. That makes it easier to line up the ruler. And I'm just gonna make a line. I'm gonna put an X while I still have the ruler in place. And I'm gonna move my ruler down, put the tip of my pencil on my caret, put the tip of the pencil on the caret down here. Sometimes it's difficult to get this exactly lined up. Make our mark, and now we have a continuous line from one tip of the board to the other. We measured from this edge. We're going to flip the board over. Now the ruler will be right side up for all of you. I'm going to mark 1 inch. In 3 locations. Draw my line. This time the cut will be on this side of the line. Come down, locate my caret, put the tip of my pencil there, and continue my line. Now, one thing I need to do is connect the line on this face to the line on this face. So in order to connect the 2 lines, I'll simply make a mark on the edge of each face here on the end. And the best that I can, and this is a little awkward, I will line up my ruler on those 2 marks. In this instance, I'm not using the caret, but just a tick mark. Sort of should be obvious. See, my ruler just kind of slipped a little bit. So again, I'll do the best that I can. You'll be able to do better because you can actually have this board maybe hanging off the edge of your table, whereas I'm holding it up for you to be able to see. So I'll connect my 2 lines, put my X on the side that I want my saw to run on, which matches the X on each face. And now we have not only an accurate line, accurately measured 1 inch from one side of this board, but we also have a precise line that's measured from the same side of the board. Now obviously human error comes into play, but that set aside, this line is parallel to both faces of this board. Not only is it accurate, but it's precise. We'll repeat the process with this Purple Heart board. My laundry is done. You can hear it there in the background. you'll notice that sometimes it's difficult on darker material to see your lines. You can actually get a white tipped pencil to make these marks. I measured from this edge. Whenever I flip, I need to continue to measure from the same edge. Mark my ends. Very difficult to see. And my mark for my saw line or my saw blade, and that's done. Now we go to cut. We'll need our clamp and our saw.